We had been hiking for hours through a section of forest so dense it seemed to swallow sound. The trees were ancient, their trunks twisted like arthritic limbs, their roots knotting the ground into uneven ridges that forced every step to be deliberate. The deeper we went, the more the world felt muffled, as if the forest had pressed a finger to its lips. Even our breathing felt intrusive, too loud in a place that wanted no witnesses. Mara kept glancing behind us, her shoulders tight. She always claimed she could sense other people's energy. But this time her voice was barely a whisper. Something's following us, and it's not human. Jason rolled his eyes, tapping his compass as if the needle's steady swing could anchor reality. It's just the woods messing with you. But the air felt wrong, thick, heavy, almost watchful. Even the wind avoided this place. Then the smell reached us, a sweet, rotting tang, like burnt sugar left too long in a pan. It drifted through the undergrowth in slow curls. My stomach tightened. We followed the scent cautiously, weaving between the trees until the forest opened into a clearing. A bonfire burned at its center, too bright, too clean, a wound of color in the darkness. Around it moved silhouettes, tall, thin, elongated shadows that danced in ritualistic arcs. Arms rising, heads bowing, bodies spinning in ways no human spine could bend. But there were no people, no figures casting them. The shadows existed without origin, without flesh. Mara grabbed my sleeve. "You see that, right?" Her voice trembled. Jason forced a laugh, but it cracked halfway out. "Light tricks. Has to be." Yet the fire wasn't natural. Its base glowed a deep indigo, shifting to sickly green at the tips. It radiated no heat, and the shadows, they moved with intention. Each blink revealed a new formation, as if they were adjusting to our presence. Then they froze. Every silhouette turned toward us in perfect unison. The clearing seemed to inhale. The forest leaned in, branches creaking softly. Not from wind, but as if listening. I stepped back. The ground felt wrong beneath my boots, the roots subtly shifting like something alive beneath the soil. Mara whispered, "It knows we're here." The shadows began to separate. Some drifted toward us, gliding across the ground with impossible smoothness. Others circled wide, marking invisible boundaries. Jason's confidence faltered. One shadow mirrored his movements exactly, tilting its head when he did, bending its limbs in grotesque imitation. Another elongated toward Mara, stretching like tar pulled thin. The fire pulsed. Shadows fell in reverse, stretching toward the flames instead of away. Colors twisted, indigo bleeding into bruised purple. Our skin reflected hues that didn't exist anywhere else. The air vibrated faintly, like a distant hum. Then something rose from the center of the bonfire. A towering figure, taller than the surrounding trees, formed from smoke, flame, and writhing silhouettes. Its shape was fluid, shifting, as if made of the forest's own darkness. Where a face should have been, shadows churned like a storm. "You see me," it whispered. The voice wasn't sound. It bloomed inside our skulls, cold and intimate. Jason staggered backward, shaking his head violently. "No, no, that's not real." But the entity tilted its head, mimicking him with slow, deliberate precision. The forest changed around us. Distances warped. A tree that had been a few feet away now loomed like a wall. Trails vanished, replaced by twisting corridors of black trunks. The world folded in on itself. Our own shadows began to detach. Mine peeled away first, rising from the ground like smoke. It circled me, lagging half a second behind my movements, mocking me. Mara's shadow split in two, one clinging to her feet, the other drifting toward the fire. Jason's shadow stretched upward, pulled like a puppet by invisible strings. The entity raised its arms. The bonfire surged, flames spiraling upward in a column of impossible color. The shadows responded instantly, converging, weaving around the entity like worshippers. "We dance for the lost," it said. "The forest collects. Those who linger become part of the ritual." A sick understanding settled over me. These silhouettes weren't illusions. They were remnants, echoes of people claimed by the forest, stripped of flesh and memory, bound to the fire. Jason suddenly gasped. His shadow had wrapped around his legs, climbing his torso like a living rope. He clawed at it, but his hands passed through. The shadow tightened, pulling him toward the clearing. His scream echoed through the trees, swallowed almost instantly by the oppressive silence. "Help me!" he shouted. But the forest seemed to absorb the sound. The entity extended one long, shifting arm toward him, and Jason's shadow jerked violently, dragging him across the ground. His boots scraped against roots, kicking up dirt, but he slid helplessly toward the fire. Mara lunged forward, grabbing his arm. I grabbed her waist, anchoring her. For a moment, the three of us formed a chain against the pull of the forest. Jason's eyes were wide, wild, pleading. The shadow tightened again. His grip slipped. Mara screamed as he was torn from her hands. Jason was pulled into the clearing, his body vanishing behind the wall of dancing silhouettes. For a moment, his shadow flickered among them. Then it joined the dance, moving with the same unnatural rhythm as the others. The entity lowered its arm. "One stays," it whispered. "Two may flee." Mara sobbed. I grabbed her hand. "Run." We bolted toward the trees. The forest resisted. Roots writhed beneath our boots, branches bent low to block our path. The air thickened like syrup. Shadows chased us, gliding effortlessly, tugging at our limbs and minds. Mara screamed as one wrapped around her waist, pulling her backward. I grabbed her arm and yanked hard, stumbling with her over a fallen log. On the other side, the forest abruptly returned to normal. The air cleared. The trees stood still. The oppressive silence lifted just enough to feel breathable. But the smell lingered, sweet, rotting, unmistakable. We didn't speak for the rest of the hike. The forest felt ordinary again, but the memory of that clearing clung to us like damp air. When we finally reached the trailhead, the world felt too bright, too loud, too alive. That night I dreamed of the fire, the cold flames, the silhouettes with no bodies, the towering entity rising from the center, whispering in a voice that wasn't a voice. And when I woke, my room was dark, except for a faint indigo shimmer on the wall, flickering like a flame that shouldn't exist. My shadow hesitated a moment before catching up to me. The forest that laughed. The trail had been narrow since morning, overgrown with brambles that snagged at boots and bare hands. The sunlight had thinned hours ago, leaving a dense green gloom that smelled of moss and rot. Caleb, the group's de facto leader, stopped and lifted his flashlight. The beam wavered, barely cutting through the dense undergrowth. "Keep close," he said, voice tight. "It's easy to get turned around here." Mina's chest heaved with a quiet panic she didn't let show. She hated enclosed spaces, hated feeling trapped, and this forest was suffocating. Behind her, Jonas muttered complaints, but his usual bravado had faltered. The forest's oppressive silence seemed to gnaw at him, leaving him twitchy and pale. Claire, ever the optimist, tried to make conversation, but even her words felt hollow. It was then that it began. A single, high-pitched laugh, soft but deliberate, rolled through the trees. Caleb froze. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere. "Did you?" he began, but stopped. Mina's mouth opened to speak, but her words were swallowed by the same laugh, which now repeated in perfect cadence after her. She hadn't laughed. Not yet, anyway. Jonas laughed nervously, and the forest answered. But it wasn't him. The tone was sharper, mocking, a grotesque mimicry. The sound echoed off trunks and stones, bouncing back with impossible delay. "It's just echoes," Claire said, though her voice trembled. "It's the wind, right?" Caleb didn't answer. He knew wind didn't laugh. Wind didn't wait for you to speak before mocking you. They pressed forward, but the trees seemed to crowd in, leaning closer with every step. Shadows shifted as though alive, stretching and collapsing in unnatural rhythm. The laughter followed. sometimes distant, sometimes inside their ears, always just out of sight. It wasn't laughter made by the forest itself. It was the forest using their own voices, reshaping them. Mina shivered. "It knows us," she whispered. "It knows how we sound." Jonas scoffed, though his voice betrayed panic. "Come on, that's ridiculous." A branch snapped behind him. The laughter erupted again, this time from nowhere but all around him. Jonas's mouth moved. "What the hell is?" And the forest finished his sentence, squealing with his exact tone, twisted and exaggerated. He froze. Caleb held up his hand. "Stay calm. Don't let it." Another laugh. This one came from Caleb's own throat, or at least it sounded like it. But the Caleb before them hadn't moved. His mouth was closed. Claire grabbed his arm. "We need to stop, we need to." The laughter had begun to layer, overlapping. Each voice stretched, warped, delayed. It followed them along the trail, skipping branches, bouncing through the canopy. Every step they took seemed to distort distance. A tree 20 feet ahead might vanish into nothing, only to reappear closer than it should be. Shadows darted beyond the beam of their flashlights, always peripheral, never fully visible. Mina's fear clawed at her chest. She could feel the forest watching, the air thickening with anticipation. The laughter became a lure, shifting direction as if tugging them deeper, past landmarks they could no longer trust. Jonas fell behind, tripping over a root. His scream was swallowed by laughter before he could finish it. Caleb spun, shining the flashlight toward him. But the figure he illuminated wasn't Jonas. It was him, laughing grotesquely, eyes wide in terror. Jonas stood frozen behind, mouth moving silently. The forest had multiplied him. The group realized then that the laughter didn't just mimic. It replaced. It wanted them separated, disoriented, and alone. The air shimmered faintly, warping the trail like a heat haze. Distances no longer obeyed logic. A boulder that should have taken 5 minutes to circle appeared instantly to their left. Caleb whispered harshly, "Follow me. Stay together. Don't speak unless you have to." But the forest had learned their rhythms. Every whispered instruction returned distorted, sometimes delayed, sometimes doubled, coming from every angle. The sound was alive, hungry, playful, cruel. Then the source revealed itself. A hollow in the earth, enormous and impossible, yawned beneath a cluster of gnarled oaks. From it came laughter so precise, so human, that Caleb's stomach churned. Shapes began to rise, wispy, partially formed, ephemeral. Not fully corporeal, not fully spirit, but something in between. They had mouths, but no faces. Their eyes were voids reflecting nothing but their own creation. They mimicked every inflection, every laugh, every terrified gasp. The forest itself had grown a consciousness, or had always been one. Mina screamed, and the entities answered with a chorus of her own voice, each layer a fraction off, an echo in the wrong pitch in the wrong space. The ground beneath their feet felt loose, as though the forest were breathing. Caleb lunged, trying to grab her hand, but she jerked back, staring at the shadows. The entities reached for them with fingers that seemed made of sound itself. Every attempt to flee only tightened the forest's grip. The laughter wasn't just sound, it was tendrils binding, shaping, consuming. "Don't fight it," Caleb muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "Don't respond." But how do you not respond to your own voice, twisted and thrown back at you, mocking your fear? The last thing Caleb remembered before everything fractured was Claire's voice. Her own mouth moving, but the sound that emerged was layered, warped, alien. And then it was everywhere. Inside, outside, above, below. When he woke, he was alone at the forest's edge, the sky pale with dawn. The trail behind him was overgrown, as if no one had ever walked it. In his pocket, he found a small stone, slick with resin and warmth, humming faintly with a distant laughter that wasn't his own, but almost. He ran. And now, sometimes at night, when Caleb speaks into a silent room, he hears the laughter again. Not a reflection, not an echo, but something waiting, just beyond the sound, ready to turn his voice into a weapon the forest can wield. The forest had claimed a piece of him, and it was patient,